Hello, my friends. How's it been so far today? Have you guys learned some good stuff? You know, I'm going to inconvenience you just a little bit. I'd really like for everybody to come forward, right? We got a lot of space up here. Usually after lunch, we lose a few people. So please, guys, can I please ask you to come forward? Come on, guys, come on. It's okay. Come on. You can do it. Come on, please, just come forward a little bit. We're going to get some good pictures and stuff. Is that, you don't want to come forward? Just a few seats? Can we come up a little bit, please? Anybody that can, please come forward. All right. Well, thank you to those who are getting up and coming forward. Oh, you're going to sit right in front here. For coming all the way to the front, I got a hat for you. Excuse me. What is your name? Lily. I have a hat for you because you came all the way to the front. You ready? Here we go. That's our new Club Nirvana hat. Have you seen these? Look at that. Club Nirvana gear. Here, all the way to the front. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming up. I appreciate it. All right, so let's get started. As Tom mentioned, I have a book I've authored. It's called Heal the Boy and the Man Will Appear. Usually when I'm on stage and the events that I put on are all about that. And it's about testimonies and transformations in life and understanding why we do some of the things we do, why we act the way we act, and why we feel the way we feel sometimes. So today I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to talk about it more in a business aspect because that's what we're here to look at, a great business opportunity where we can help people, right? So how many people here, I'm going to ask this again, really see the opportunity in what we're doing here? Let me hear you raise your hand. If you really see the opportunity, say yes. Yes. All right, that's good. I'm glad to hear that because especially after hearing Judge Doug, he has an amazing story. Some of the information that he gave us is just outstanding. I was inspired. You know, it turns sales into a form of just really going out there and helping people. We're not there trying to sell you something. We're going, look at the opportunity that we have here for health and wellness, right? So I told you guys this morning that everybody that showed up here, I thanked you, and I said, you guys are the A players, right? Not everybody got up and came today. There was a lot more people invited. You guys are the A players. Do you know how you stay an A player? You show up. You don't hang out with the C players. That's the truth. Who we hang around is who we are and who we become. Let me go into a little bit how I learned some of these things. At a very young age, I had a traumatic event that happened in my life. I was separated from my father. I'm going to just bullet point a few things, but I was separated from my father, who I was very close with at 7 years old. And what happened to me is I ended up creating kind of an alter ego because I was shooken by it, right? And I went from this loving little boy like all kids are. I tell people that all the time. Treat your kids, love your kids, enjoy your kids, speak to them like they're the greatest thing in the world because they are. And if you speak to them that way, as they grow up, they're going to continue to believe that in themselves because it's true for all of you here today. They're going to believe that. They're going to grow up and they're going to be successful because success is not just money. It's part of it. It's great. But success is not just money. It's about how we feel, how we live, who we live with, and our environment. So going back to the people you hang around and not hanging around with C players, you know, that doesn't mean cut a bunch of people out of your life unless you need to, right? Sometimes we have people in our lives who bring us down, who talk negative, who say that won't work, don't do this, don't try that. Most of those people haven't succeeded in an industry, in a business, and whatever it might be. They're telling you their fears. That's not going to work. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't try that. What I've done with those people in my life is I continue to love them. I try to help them. I try to lift them up. But if they don't come to the level of understanding their own strengths, I continue to support them, but I can't be around them because all they're going to do is drag you down, drag you down, drag you down. And it's important that you're not around those people. The statistics say that the 5 people you hang around the most is who you become. Financially, mentally, everything you're doing in your business, in your job, whatever you're doing, the 5 people you hang around with is who you become. So just a little tip there. After I was separated from my father, like I mentioned, I kind of created this alter ego because I was broken. I didn't understand my emotions at the time, at that age, and I was heartbroken. I was sad. I was depressed. I had anxiety. I was confused. I had all these things going on within me, and I didn't understand what they were. So I really went on this wild journey of living a wild life. By the time I was 9, I was doing drugs. By the time I was 13, I had conceived, my girlfriend at the time and I had conceived our first child. My son, he's 35, he's about this tall. He's really big. I love him to death. Got a couple grandkids with him. But 13 years old, I didn't know what I was doing. I just know I was lost in the world. And then at 14, I got incarcerated. And because of this alter ego that I had created, and I didn't realize it at the time, I wore a mask, right? I wore this mask of, I didn't want to be laughed at. I didn't want to cry. I wanted to be this tough guy. And that's because going back, when I had first gotten separated from my father, I would cry every day. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand it. I would cry. I was sad. I was all those emotions that I was telling you about, but I didn't know how to understand them. I didn't know what I was feeling. So, being 7 years old in school, kids on the playground aren't always that friendly, right? They start to see the kid crying and they want to pick on somebody. So they would laugh at me. They'd call me the crybaby and all these things. And one day when I created that alter ego, I remember looking at these kids that were laughing at me and I said, I'm never going to cry again. 7 years old, my heart hardened. I'm never going to cry again and no one's ever going to laugh at me again. So from that day on, if you looked at me for more than a couple of seconds, I assumed you were laughing at me or wanting to make fun of me, and we'd fight. I'd fight like lions. I mean, I had this anger, I had this rage, I had this confusion because of this separation from my father. So that alter ego got me into a lot of trouble. And when I was 14, it was the first time I got incarcerated. And I basically would spend the next 10 years either on the streets, in street gangs, or in prison. And I was 24, just about turned 25. I got out of San Quentin prison, and I experienced a lot of hard times, a lot of rough times. Has anybody here had any rough times in their life? Right? We've all had some hard times, things we'd had to get through, things we had to survive, right? Has anybody here had a perfect life? If you have, stand up. We're going to beat you up right now. So I got out of prison, and I made a decision, right? Decisions are things that we don't turn back on. If you actually make a decision, you decide to do something, you don't ever think about it again, you just do it. But I made a decision, I wanted to change my life. And I started to think about the 3 questions that I always had in all those years that I was getting in trouble, finding myself incarcerated on the streets. When I was on the streets at a very young age, I'd sleep in laundromats. I was smart enough to think, hey, hospitals are open all night, so I'd go sneak into their waiting rooms because it was warm in there. I'd sleep in the waiting rooms and stuff. But I had those 3 questions. Why do I do what I do? Because I got myself in a lot of trouble. Why do I act the way that I act? Because I had this mask of this cool, tough guy. I thought that's what life was about. And then more importantly, why do I feel the way that I feel? Because I never felt good, right? I didn't feel good about myself. I didn't feel good about the people around me. I thought that, this guy was laughing at me or this person was making fun of me. I always thought that there was something wrong. And that circle, of 5+ that I hung around with were doing the same stuff that I was doing, that I was getting in trouble all the time. So I decided I wanted to change. I made the decision I wanted to change my life. At 25, I signed up for a college class. I was actually forced to by my parole officer. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. And he said that I was trying to move county to county. And because I wanted to change. And the parole officer did an interview with me, and he said, hey, if you want to move into my county, you have to go to school. You have to be in college before you spend one night in my county. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And I actually at that time, I hadn't even graduated from high school because of the life I'd been living. And I had no idea how to enroll in a college course. So I went over to the local college to Santa Rosa Junior College. I grew up in San Jose. Moved my stuff over to Santa Rosa, signed up. I remember signing up, going to administration, and they said, well, you have to take an assessment before you can take any classes. So take this assessment, and then we'll see what classes you're ready for. So I took the assessment, and I came back, and they said, well, you're not ready for college just yet. And I said, okay. So they put me in this little trailer on the side of the college, and I stayed there for almost 2 years preparing myself for college courses. When I got I think it was called a high school equivalency, and I was ready to go to the college courses. One of the first courses that I took for general education, working towards a degree, was Psychology 101. Anybody here ever taken a psychology class? Psychology 101? That class changed my life. In Psychology 101, real quick, the basis of those three questions that I said I had: why do I feel the way I feel? Why do I act the way that I act? Why do I do the things that I do? It answered some of those questions. If you grew up in an environment like this, you may do things like this. And I was shocked. I go, there's actually an answer to this question I've been asking for the last 10, 15 years. If this happened to you, you may feel like this. If this happened to you, you may act like this. It had some answers to these questions that I'd been just trying to figure out. So I dived in, right? The next decision came. I dived in and said, I am going to figure out everything that I can learn. I'm going to learn everything I can learn about this psychology stuff, and I'm going to change my life with it, right? So how many are diving in to this new business that we're in today? How many are going to dive into the CBD, THC world, right? This is amazing stuff. I keep saying it, and I'll say it over and over, but I really love what Doug has to talk about. I mean, he goes all the way back to prohibition and what I don't want to say medicine, what these products can do for us, right? So it's exciting. It really is. And diving in, I dove in to the psychology world, neuroscience, anything that I could do to figure out what would help me feel better, what would help me understand myself, what would help me change my life. And I'll tell you, those studies led me all over the place. I ended up studying psychology at Stanford University because I wanted to study with the top. I wanted to study with the best. And I learned a lot about life. And I learned a lot about why I felt the way I felt, why I did the things I did. You know what I'm going to add in there? Why I didn't do some of the things that I wanted to do. Right? So a lot of people will jump into a new business, a new opportunity, and we want to take action on it. We want to do things, but we don't, right? Oh, I want this. I love this. I know this is a great opportunity, but you stand there and you don't do nothing, right? I could call these 5 people, but we don't call them. Why not? There's reasons for these things. And a lot of what I learned all has to do with neuroscience, associations, conditioning. Have you ever heard the term, we are conditioned from birth? Conditioning, psychological conditioning? I asked that because one time I was talking to, it was a group of kids actually, and I was talking about conditioning, and I can kind of see I lost them. And I said, do you know what conditioning means? And this kid goes, yeah. And I said, okay, what does conditioning mean? And he said, well, I'm at the gym, I'm working out, I'm conditioning. And I said, okay, that's not the conditioning that I'm talking about. I'm talking about psychological conditioning, and that the environment that we're in, we conform to, right? And that goes back to the 5 people I was just talking about, the people you hang around with. Growing up, the people that I hung around with were committing crimes, doing things they shouldn't have been doing. I started doing the same thing. I thought that's what life was about. I thought that was the way I was supposed to live. Sadly, to this day, it still happens. But when I was a kid, prison was the goal. It wasn't the university, right? When you're hanging around people who are bragging about how much time they got, and the people who have the most time are the ones that everybody looks up to, and that's your environment, that's what you think is the right way. That's what you think is the way to go. So, who we're around is very important. Taking action in whatever you're doing is very important. All right? How many people here have been part of the club for, say, I think we actually soft launched about a month ago. How many people have been around that long? All right, I'm going to ask you guys for some honesty, okay? You can just raise your hands. How many of you have done everything you can do to grow this business, to grow your business? Not one hand. That's okay. That's what this is about. That's what today is about. Education, understanding marketing, the technology, getting these guys up here that have the information that you need to go out there and share. Because I'll tell you, for me, when I hear some of the stuff these guys are talking about, it inspires me. It almost becomes an obligation to go out and share this information knowing that I'm going to help people. Right? It's not just about going out there and trying to sell something and building a team. It's about, wow, I can really help people with these products. So I'm excited about that. Now, I can never leave this out of my story when, I studied the psychology and the neuroscience, and I started to understand these things about associations and all. There was a great understanding there, and it took me far. I was able to get a bunch of steps forward that I was never able to get, but there's healing that needs to come with that type of trauma in your life, and the trauma came from above. The healing from the trauma came from above. I want you to know that for me. I had a couple of really good experiences, dreams, powerful visions. I don't know what you want to call them, but I do know that each and every person on this planet is here for a purpose, is here for a reason. And regardless of where you're at right now or what you're doing, kind of a side note, make sure you understand, you seek, and you find what is your purpose. You know, most purposes have to do with helping people in some form, in some way. If you've survived any type of trauma, there's wisdom in it. You're here today, and somehow you got through it. There's wisdom in that, right? You can share with somebody what you did, the tools you used to get to where you're at today, somebody who's in that fire. I tell people all the time, I've been through the fires of hell, and now I'm carrying around buckets of water for other people, right? I think anybody here who has some wisdom, who's gained some wisdom in their life, and regardless of the situation you've been in, you can help others, and that's really important to me. All right, getting back to making decisions, taking action, some of the things that I learned with psychology, I want to just give you guys this for an understanding of who you are. Have you ever heard anybody say, that's just the way I am? That's just the way I am. You know, you're trying to help them, you're trying to figure things out. They go, that's just the way I am. That's one of the biggest lies that really frustrates me. I want to tell you something. I learned this from Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's a neuroscientist. He's one of the guys that I study with quite a bit, or study his stuff quite a bit. And he talks about how our personalities are created. And it kind of goes back into the conditioning. But it starts out with a mood, right? Let's say something happens to you today. Maybe, I don't wish this on anybody, but maybe there's somebody gets into a car accident out there and they break their wrist, right? There's an emotion attached to that event. And what that creates is a memory, right? And that memory, if you hold on to it for about a month later or so, you can be triggered by that memory, right? It's called a temperament. So something happens a week later, you're in this mood, somebody says, you seem like you're in a bad mood, why are you in this bad mood? And you go, I got in a car accident last week and I broke my wrist, it's really bothering me, so we're in a mood now. 2 months go by, the cast is off, you still remember it. You're talking to your friends and somebody brings up a car accident that happened to somebody else or somewhere else and you're triggered by it, right? You're in your temperament now, you're triggered by, oh man, you know what? 2 months ago, I got in a car accident and I broke my wrist and it was such a pain and it bothered me and now you've been triggered by what happened to you a while ago, right? You're carrying that weight. This happens to us in our lives in anything, situations that may have where there is an emotion attached to an event. Now, if you continue to carry that, it turns into part of our personality. And sometimes we don't even know it, right? Let's say that car accident that happened, there was a red car involved in that car accident. And all of a sudden, we've been carrying this for so long, that's in our subconscious, and we'll see a red car out of the side of our eye, we won't even realize it, and it'll trigger that anger, that upset. And somebody will be like, what's the matter with you all of a sudden? I don't even know, I just feel like I'm pissed off all of a sudden. So these types of things happen to us, and we don't even know, because they're patterns, they're conditioning, we're conformed all the time. The reason I try to teach this is because if we're aware of it, then we'd understand it, and we could avoid it, right? So that's just something that I practice myself, trying to understand what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, why I'm doing things, why I feel the way that I feel, why I'm acting the way that I'm acting. I have another example. Throughout my life, I've seen therapists, I've seen psychologists, I've seen coaches. I've used a lot of different people in my travels to grow. And actually, one of the therapists that I was talking with, I guess she didn't have a really good high school experience, right? When I met her, she was a beautiful lady. What she says is that when she was in high school, she wasn't that. She talks about her hair was messed up and how she looked, and she was made fun of and all these things. I never saw her, but I guess she didn't have a good high school experience. And she realized one time, understanding these concepts that I'm telling you about, and you can use these in your home life and in your business. Anything I'm teaching you right now, you can use in your home life and in your business. Because if we understand why we're feeling the way we're feeling, maybe you're asking somebody, you're trying to offer somebody a product, a situation, and they're telling you no, and you start to get upset, or there's some weird feeling of, oh, I can't do this. These are why I'm teaching you these things. And if you're at home with your spouse, with your kids, and things are happening, and you start to get bubbled up and you start to get angry, understand some of this stuff is buildup. It's come from experiences that are connected to emotions in your life. So anyways, this therapist that I was working with was talking about how she was in this great mood. Everything was fine. She walked into the room, and her husband was watching High School Musical. I think a few years ago, that was like a real popular thing, High School Musical. And she instantly was in a bad mood. And she was like, started yelling at him, get away from me, all this kind of stuff, but she didn't realize why. And she was able to step back and think like, why am I upset all the time? All of a sudden, I was just fine a few minutes ago. What is going on? Why am I feeling this way that I'm feeling? Why am I treating him the way that I'm treating him all of a sudden? And she realized, thinking about it, that because of her high school experience, when she's seen this movie about high school and all these happy kids and dancing around, it triggered her old experience. So it's that same pattern I was just explaining to you, right? That can happen to us in anything that we're doing. So don't be discouraged as you move forward in your business, as you launch your business, because it's easy to go, I can't do this. Especially after 2 or 3 people say, no, this, whatever it is, or they make some negative comments, it's easy to go, man, I've tried this, I can't do it. What that is, it's a pattern, it's a condition that you've experienced. It's an association with the word no that you've had, and you don't like it. You don't want to hear it. It's frustrating, and you're just like, I'm not going to do this. Understand that in anything that we do, there's always a no, but we keep going, right? We keep trying. I always tell people, go back to like when you were a kid, right? Go back to when you were a kid and remember the beliefs that your parents had in you when you were a small child. How many people can walk? When you fell down as a kid, did you forget this? This isn't for me. I'm not going to walk. No, you got up and you fell and you banged your head and it hurt and you cried and you said, no, I'm going to walk. And you got up and you tried and you tried and you tried and then you walked in here today, right? And your parents didn't give up on you. When you fell down, they said, come on, get up. Get up, you can do it. And they helped you and they walked with you and they helped you and they walked with you. And you fell and you got up and they helped you and they helped you and you started walking. So go back to the strength. Remember who you are. Remember who you were born to be. Because that's key. Every one of you, and I say this with 100% confidence, you can do anything you want to do. If I can go from sleeping in laundromats, being in prison, San Quentin prison, to writing books, creating my own programs, having my own stages, teaching people, training people how to come out of their fire, you can too. And for years and years, my entire life, I've always heard people say, if I can do it, you can do it. And before I used to go, man, everybody says that. But they say it because it's true, because we've all experienced hard times in life. We've all been through trauma. We've all had just things that we thought would never end. But we're here today. So if I can do it, you can do it. And I'm sure some of you have amazing stories about places you've been and things you've survived, right? So don't allow our old experiences to stop us. Don't allow a no we got 2 weeks ago to stop us from making that phone call or talking to somebody new today. Because the education that you're getting on these products, they're needed. It's not just something you're out there trying to sell just to make money. There's a ton of opportunity to make really good money here. But we're also helping people. Thank you.